I never thought I would be the kind of person to date someone from a wealthy family. As a self-taught software developer, working for a small startup, I lived a modest life that made me happy. Then I met Sophia at a coffee shop when she was having trouble with her laptop. Those blue eyes and genuine smile captivated me instantly. After 8 months of dating, she invited me to her family reunion. I was nervous but excited to finally meet the people who raised this amazing woman. Little did I know they had plans to tear me apart. Before I tell you how revealing my true identity made an entire wealthy family panic, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit subscribe so you never miss my next real-life story. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, I learned the value of hard work from an early age. My parents were teachers who encouraged creativity and problem-solving, rather than focusing solely on formal education. This mindset led me to teach myself coding, instead of pursuing a traditional computer science degree. By 32, I had built a comfortable life, doing what I loved, even if my bank account wasn't overflowing. I first noticed Sophia when she stormed into my favorite coffee shop, frantically trying to fix her laptop before an important presentation. When I offered to help, she looked skeptical, but desperate. 30 minutes later, not only had I recovered her files, but we discovered a mutual love for obscure indie films and hiking trails. She gave me her number before rushing off to her meeting. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where conversation flowed effortlessly. Sophia told me she worked in marketing for a consulting firm, but never mentioned her family wealth. She seemed genuinely interested in my projects and ideas, asking thoughtful questions about my work. When she laughed, her entire face lit up in a way that made my heart race. As weeks turned into months, our relationship deepened. We spent weekends exploring hiking trails, attending film festivals, and having passionate discussions about books and technology. I introduced her to my small circle of friends who welcomed her warmly. She seemed comfortable in my modest apartment, never complaining about the creaky floors or outdated kitchen. The invitation to her family reunion came unexpectedly one Sunday morning, as we shared breakfast. My parents host this big gathering every year, Sophia explained, stirring her coffee nervously. All the relatives come. It would mean a lot if you could be there. Of course, I replied, squeezing her hand. I would love to meet your family. She bit her lip. Just so you know, they can be a bit judgmental sometimes, especially my dad. I laughed it off. Every family has its quirks, mine included. I can handle it. What Sophia failed to mention was the magnitude of this event, or her family status. In preparation, I bought new clothes, practiced proper dining etiquette, and even researched wine varieties so I could make intelligent conversation. I wanted to make a good impression. I also prepared a special gift. Over the past 3 years, I had been nurturing a rare orchid species, carefully propagating it from a tiny cutting. The delicate purple and white blooms were stunning, and I thought it would make a unique personal present rather than an expensive store-bought item. The day of the reunion arrived with perfect summer weather. Sophia picked me up in her BMW, which I had always assumed was a splurge from her marketing job. As we drove, the neighborhoods became increasingly upscale until we turned onto a private road lined with ancient oak trees. My jaw dropped when the Anderson estate came into view. The mansion stood 3 stories tall with gleaming white columns and manicured gardens stretching across at least 5 acres. A fountain adorned the circular driveway where luxury cars were parked in neat rows. You grew up here? I asked, my voice barely audible. Sophia shrugged. Yeah, but it is not a big deal. It was a very big deal. The Anderson estate was worth at least $15 million, maybe more. I suddenly understood why Sophia always preferred staying at my place rather than inviting me to hers. We were greeted at the door by a uniformed staff member who took our coats and directed us to the back garden where the festivities were taking place. Sophia squeezed my hand reassuringly before leading me through the house. Each room we passed displayed museum-quality art and antique furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. The garden was filled with about 50 people, dressed in casual but clearly expensive clothing. Sophia guided me toward a distinguished couple, standing near the bar. The man had silver hair and sharp blue eyes that matched Sophia. The woman beside him was slim and elegant, with an expression that seemed permanently critical. "Mom, Dad, this is Reuben," Sophia said. "Reuben, these are my parents, Gregory and Eleanor Anderson." Gregory sized me up with a single glance before offering a limp handshake. "So you are the programmer Sophia has mentioned. Software developer?" "Yes, sir," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It is nice to finally meet you both." Eleanor barely touched my hand. "Charmed, I am sure. Sophia, darling, your cousin Amanda just arrived with her new husband. You remember, he is the neurosurgeon who graduated from Johns Hopkins." A tall man approached us wearing designer sunglasses and a smirk. "So this is the boyfriend," he said, extending his hand. "Jackson Anderson, Sophia's brother. Harvard Law, in case you were wondering." "Nice to meet you," I said, already feeling out of place. "Sophia speaks highly of you." I presented the orchid to Eleanor, explaining its rarity and the care I had taken to grow it. She accepted it with a tight smile before immediately handing it to a staff member. "How quaint," she said. "Perhaps it can go somewhere in the staff quarters." The first hour was uncomfortable but manageable. I made small talk with various relatives, all of whom seemed to work in finance, medicine, or law. Each conversation inevitably turned to questions about my education and career. "So no formal degree?" Gregory asked during dinner, his voice carrying across the table. "How unusual in today's competitive market. Self-taught skills can be valuable," I replied. "The tech industry often values practical experience over credentials. Perhaps for entry-level positions," Gregory said with a dismissive wave. "But for any serious career advancement, proper education is essential." "Where did you say you work again?" "A startup called Tech Minds. We develop custom software solutions for small businesses." "Never heard of it," Gregory replied. "Must be very boutique." Eleanor leaned forward. "Sophia used to date a wonderful young man who ran his own hedge fund." "What was his name, dear Trevor?" "His family has a summer home just down the road from the Vanderbilts." I glanced at Sophia, expecting her to change the subject or defend me. Instead, she smiled awkwardly and began describing the home in question. My heart sank a little. The seating arrangement for dinner separated me from Sophia, placing me between an elderly aunt who was nearly deaf and a teenage cousin absorbed in her phone. The conversation around the table revolved around stock portfolios, recent vacations, to exclusive resorts, and private school admissions. I had nothing to contribute. So Reuben Gregory called from the head of the table. "I heard programmers these days can make a decent living. Nothing like finance, of course, but respectable. What does someone in your position typically earn?" The table fell quiet, all eyes turning to me. My face grew hot with embarrassment. Dad, Sophia protested weakly. "That is not really appropriate dinner conversation." "Nonsense," Gregory replied. "If Reuben is going to be part of this family gathering, we should get to know him. Financial compatibility is important in relationships." Before I could formulate a response, Jackson jumped in. "I just read an article about how most tech startups fail within the first 3 years. Must be stressful working with such job insecurity." Actually, I began, but Eleanor interrupted. "Speaking of careers, did you hear that Margaret's son just made partner at Goldman Sachs? Only 35 years old. Such ambition." After dinner, the family moved to various activities around the estate. Jackson invited me to join a tennis match with his cousins. "Ever played?" he asked. "Not really," I admitted. "Golf, sailing, polo." With each shake of my head, his smirk grew wider. "Well, what sports do you play?" "I enjoy hiking and rock climbing," I offered. "How rustic," he replied, drawing laughs from those nearby. Throughout the afternoon, the tests continued. Eleanor cornered me for a conversation about modern art, deliberately using terminology no layperson would know. Gregory challenged me to identify various wine vintages, making a show of my limited knowledge. Even distant relatives seemed to join the game, asking pointed questions about my family background and connections. What hurt most was watching Sophia's transformation. The woman who had laughed at my jokes and shared my simple pleasures now seemed embarrassed by my presence. She constantly corrected my behavior, wincing when I used the wrong fork or mispronounced a French wine. During a brief moment alone, Sophia pulled me aside near the garden fountain. "You are doing great," she whispered, though her expression suggested otherwise. "Just try to be a bit more refined. Dad is actually a wonderful person once you get to know him." "Your family has been insulting me all day," I replied quietly, "and you have barely defended me once." "They are just protective," she insisted. "They want to make sure I am with someone who fits into our world. You could fit in if you really tried. Maybe take some classes, network with the right people." Her words stung worse than any direct insult from her family. When she excused herself to join her mother, I took a moment alone on a garden bench to gather my thoughts. That is when I noticed Sophia's phone left behind. A notification appeared from her friend Taylor. "How's it going with the charity case boyfriend meeting the family?" My heart sank as I saw Sophia's reply. "Disaster. So awkward. Dad is right. He is way too ordinary for this crowd. Might have to end things soon." I carefully placed the phone back where she had left it, feeling a cold clarity wash over me. The woman I thought I knew, the connection I thought we shared, had been an illusion, or perhaps worse, a temporary amusement for someone accustomed to more refined entertainment. As evening approached, the event shifted to a formal dinner under elegant tents set up on the lawn. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and a string quartet played softly in the background. I was seated at a table far from Sophia, surrounded by distant relatives who barely acknowledged my presence. Throughout the meal, the slights continued. A great-uncle asked loudly if my parents had saved properly for retirement, while an aunt wondered if startup employees received health insurance. Each comment was framed as innocent curiosity but designed to highlight the class difference. "You know," said a cousin seated across from me, "my assistant tried to learn coding from one of those online courses. Said it was impossible to get a real job afterward. How fortunate you found something even at a small company." I nodded politely, while eating my perfectly cooked steak, wondering how much longer I could endure this treatment. The breaking point came during dessert, when Gregory stood to make a toast. He spoke about family legacy, the importance of surrounding oneself with the right kind of people, and making wise choices for the future. "As we welcome guests into our home," he said, glass raised, "we must remember that not everyone shares our values or understanding of responsibility. Some may be drawn to our family for reasons beyond genuine affection." His gaze settled on me, leaving no doubt about his meaning. Eleanor nodded in agreement, while several relatives murmured their approval. "Sophia has always had a charitable heart," Gregory continued with a thin smile. "But charity and life partnerships are different matters. I trust she will make distinctions wisely." Jackson raised his glass. "To wise choices." The gathering echoed his sentiment, and I watched in disbelief as Sophia joined them, smiling nervously as she sipped her champagne. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt transformed into a cold, clear determination. These people had judged me without knowing me, based solely on superficial metrics of worth. It was time they learned how meaningless those metrics truly were. I politely excused myself to use the restroom, stepping away from the table with forced calmness. Once inside the opulent marble bathroom, I made a brief phone call to my assistant, Marcus. "It is time," I said quietly. "Bring the portfolio to the Anderson estate immediately. Use the private entrance protocol." Returning to the party, I found Gregory holding court, regaling his audience with anecdotes about foolish investment decisions made by those without proper financial education. When he paused for laughter, I gently tapped my glass with a spoon. "If I may," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet tent. All eyes turned toward me with expressions ranging from annoyance to curiosity. "First, I would like to thank the Anderson family for their hospitality today. This gathering has been incredibly illuminating." I maintained eye contact with Gregory, whose expression hardened. I came here hoping to know the family who raised the woman I care about. In that regard, this day has been an unqualified success." Sophia stared at me with wide eyes, confusion evident on her face. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her chair while Jackson crossed his arms defensively. When Sophia and I met, I was immediately drawn to her intelligence, creativity, and what I perceived as genuine warmth. I deliberately avoided mentioning certain aspects of my life because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not what I possess. A subtle murmur rippled through the crowd. Gregory opened his mouth to speak, but I continued smoothly. "You have all made assumptions about me based on partial information. You judged my worth by my apparent income, my education, and my social connections. These are shallow metrics, but since they matter so much to you, perhaps I should clarify a few things." On cue, Marcus appeared at the tent entrance, carrying a sleek leather portfolio. He approached with professional efficiency, handing me the documents before stepping back. "The startup where I work is indeed small, with only 12 employees. What I failed to mention is that I own it along with 7 other technology companies across 3 continents." I opened the portfolio, removing several documents. "I prefer hands-on development work because it keeps me grounded and creative, not because I cannot afford to stop working." The atmosphere in the tent shifted as I placed photographs and financial statements on the table. They showed me with recognizable tech billionaires cutting ribbons at charity events and standing before my various properties. My net worth currently stands at just over $4 billion, primarily from my early investment in a social media platform you all likely use daily. I am the anonymous founder behind the Rubik's Core encryption system that protects government and financial institutions worldwide. Gregory's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. Eleanor clutched her pearl necklace while Jackson's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. "Additionally," I continued, "Anderson, financial relies heavily on my company's security infrastructure. Mr. Anderson. In fact, I hold a 17% stake in your corporation through various investment vehicles. We have never met in person because I prefer to send representatives to board meetings." Gregory stumbled back into his chair, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. "You are R.J. Mercer," he whispered. In certain circles I acknowledged, though I prefer Reuben in my personal life. The revelation sent shockwaves through the gathering. R.J. Mercer was known in financial and tech circles as a reclusive genius who had revolutionized data security while amassing a fortune through strategic investments. Few knew his full name or had seen recent photographs. "Mrs. Anderson, your charitable foundation received $2 million last year from the Phoenix Trust. That is my philanthropic arm." I smiled at Eleanor, whose complexion had turned ashen. "And Jackson, your law firm is currently representing one of my subsidiaries in the Westlake merger. Your managing partner speaks highly of you." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. "But none of this matters," I continued softly, "because what I saw today was the true character of this family. You humiliated someone you believed was beneath you simply because you could. I looked directly at Sophia, allowed it to happen because you were ashamed of who you thought I was." Sophia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Reuben, I had no idea. Why did you not tell me? Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "Would you have defended me today if you had known my bank balance? If so, what does that say about your character?" Gregory suddenly found his voice rising from his chair with an outstretched hand. "Reuben, there has clearly been a misunderstanding. Had we known who you were, that is precisely the problem." I interrupted gently. "My worth as a human being should not depend on my financial statement or social connections. The fact that you think it does tells me everything I need to know." Eleanor stepped forward, her social training taking over. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I am sure we can clear up this unfortunate situation." "There is nothing to discuss," I replied. "I came here hoping to meet a family that valued character, kindness, and authenticity. Instead, I found people who measure others only by their utility and status." Jackson approached next business card suddenly in hand. We should talk about potential synergies between our companies. My firm has been looking to expand its tech client portfolio. I declined the card with a polite shake of my head. The other relatives began moving closer, expressions transformed from disdain to eager interest. It was both sad and darkly amusing how quickly their assessment had changed. Looking at Sophia one last time, I saw confusion and calculation battling in her eyes. The woman I thought I had fallen for had never truly existed. "Marcus will see me out," I said, turning away from the chaos my revelation had caused. "Thank you for the clarity this day has provided." As I walked toward the exit, Sophia ran after me, grabbing my arm. "Please, Reuben, you cannot just leave like this. I love you. I was going to introduce you to the venture capitalists who could help your startup." I gently removed her hand. "You love the idea of me now, that you know who I really am. But I saw who you really are today, and that is something money cannot fix." With that, I walked away from the Anderson estate, leaving behind a family in panic and a relationship that had been built on sand. The drive home that night was strangely peaceful. While a chapter of my life had ended, I felt an unexpected sense of freedom. For months, I had been playing a role, carefully omitting details about my success to find someone who would value me for myself. The irony was painful, in hiding my wealth to find authentic connection. I had discovered the shallowness I feared. The next few weeks were predictably chaotic. Sophia called constantly, leaving tearful voicemails and sending elaborate gifts to my office. Gregory attempted to schedule meetings through my company, while Eleanor suddenly wanted to collaborate on charitable initiatives. Jackson sent proposal after proposal for legal partnerships. I responded to none of them. Instead, I focused on healing. The betrayal stung deeply, not because I had lost Sophia, but because I had lost the person I thought she was. The woman who laughed at my jokes while hiking mountain trails, who debated philosophy with me until sunrise, who seemed to see beyond surface appearances. That woman had been a mirage. At first, I buried myself in work, spending long hours coding alongside my team. They knew nothing of my personal drama, only that I was more subdued than usual. Gradually, I began to reconnect with old friends who had known me before my financial success, people who valued my oddities and passions regardless of my bank account. 3 months after the Anderson fiasco, I found myself volunteering at a coding boot camp for underprivileged youth. Teaching these eager students brought a joy I had not felt in a long time. Their excitement over solving problems and building something from nothing reminded me why I had fallen in love with technology in the first place. One participant, a brilliant 18-year-old named Jamal, had taught himself programming while working night shifts at a convenience store. His determination and raw talent reminded me of my younger self. "How did you get started in tech?" he asked me during a break. I told him about growing up with limited resources but unlimited curiosity about the used computer my parents had scraped together money to buy, about the library books and online forums that became my university. "So you never got a formal degree either?" he asked, hope evident in his voice. "No," I replied. "And while it might close some doors, talent and persistence open others. Education comes in many forms." That conversation sparked an idea that would eventually become my most rewarding venture. Within 6 months, I had established the Mercer Foundation for Self-Taught Innovators, providing mentorship resources and seed funding to promising individuals without formal credentials. We created alternative pathways to tech careers, focusing on ability rather than pedigree. As for Sophia, I eventually heard through mutual acquaintances that she had become engaged to a surgeon from a good family. I wished her well, genuinely hoping she might someday recognize the emptiness of valuing status over substance. The Anderson family continued their efforts to connect with me for nearly a year. Gregory even attempted to join boards of organizations where I served. I maintained professional courtesy, but kept firm boundaries. Their panicked attempts to repair bridges they had burned served as a constant reminder of the lesson I had learned that day at their estate. True worth cannot be measured in dollars, degrees, or social connections. It exists in how we treat others when we believe no one is watching, and the respect we show to those who can offer us nothing in return. and in the authenticity we bring to our relationships. The experience changed me fundamentally. While I had always tried to look beyond surface appearances, the Anderson incident sharpened my ability to recognize genuine people. I became more open about my success in initial meetings, watching carefully for the subtle shift in treatment that revealed character. Today, my life is richer than ever, filled with relationships based on mutual respect and shared values, rather than financial calculations. Sometimes losing what we thought we wanted creates space for what we truly need. Have you ever had an experience that revealed someone's true character in a surprising way? Share your story in the comments below. If this tale of unexpected revelations resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding authenticity in a world obsessed with appearances. Remember, your value is not determined by others' perception of you, but by the integrity with which you live your life. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay true to yourself, no matter who is watching.